I vowed that I wouldn't cry after I watched that video. The two kids you saw there that I gave a wee kiss to, they're two of our family sponsored kids. And we had the privilege of actually meeting them, when I went there. So I've picked the cutest little girl as my sponsor child. So if you've got a sponsor child, apologies, but Lenza wins. But what I want to do is I want to actually invite the team. I had the privilege of actually leading this team out to Ethiopia, but it was so easy because I think it is the best team to lead. So we're going to invite the team onto the stage. So give them a round of applause. Come on. Come on. So what the format of the evening is going to be is we're going to obviously go around the list. You can see the nervous wrecks, aren't they? We're going to go down that group of people. And after that, we're going to get Lorelei and Thor are going to stay up and share their compassion story. But what I want each of these team members to do is to look into the eyes of this congregation. Because I know in a lot of the WhatsApp chat, we've got WhatsApp chat for Ethiopia, and all afternoon it's been buzzing about people's nerves. Nerves are going on stage. There wasn't this much nerves of arriving in a third world or a developing country like Ethiopia, but coming on stage to face you was quite nerve-wracking. So I know you'll give them big smiles. So pick someone you see in the audience who's smiling. And if they're not smiling, they'll smile now. Yeah, that's right. And I want you to introduce yourself and maybe share a memorable moment, a highlight, or a joke if you can't think of anything. Okay? No pressure.
Hello, my name is Robert. The highlight for me was we sponsor an 8-year-old boy, Kaya, from the west of Ethiopia. So it was a delight to meet him, meet his mum, see the change that the sponsorship made in their lives, and also see the local church in action, what they're doing, what a great work they're doing abroad. And it was an amazing trip.
Hello, my name's Cam, and my highlight was to see the sponsored child. It was lovely to see what the sponsorship did. It was amazing, the way he came in, and you can't really explain how wonderful it was to see this little boy come in and the difference we made. It was amazing.
I am John. Highlights for me is actually meeting three of our translators were actually graduates from Compassion Program. And they gave us a testimony of how they're doing. And it was immensely inspiring to hear. One is a banker, one's a teacher, and one's a psychologist. And they're all from the poorest of the poor, grew up in the slums. So it was amazing to see that change.
Hi, I'm Claire. I think my highlight was probably meeting our own sponsor child as well. So he'd come from a rural area with his dad. It was his first time ever in Addis Ababa, the capital. So it was a big trip for him. And just being able to spend the day with them in the afternoon and just to encourage them. And it was a real blessing just to see the life behind the photos that you see. It was great.
I'm Susan. My highlight was meeting my two sponsored children who are both in Ethiopia. So that was a highlight for me.
Hello, my name's Amy. Mine was much the same, getting to meet my sponsor child. His name is Kaba, he's 5, and I got to spend the day with him and his mum. And just as the same as John, the 3 translators that were with us and seeing the fruit of where our money is going and the ministry and how it's having an impact. And it was just so wonderful to hear them speaking and sharing their story and proclaiming Christ and still being part of Compassion Ministry and helping that ministry. It was just really powerful.
Hi, I'm Wendy, and my moment actually changed every day, because every day we walked into a project in the love that the care workers and that pastor had for the group. They knew every child's name, and then we'd go further and further. So it was, for me, the love that the pastors and all the care workers gave to the kids.
Hi, my name is Lorelei, and the handsome cupbearer next to me is my husband, Thor. Yeah. Yeah. And you know, this mission trip to Ethiopia was one of the best things we've ever done. And the fact that we got to experience this as a married couple was a huge blessing, and we're thankful to God for that. So we just wanted to share for a few minutes how we ended up sponsoring a beautiful 1-year-old Ethiopian girl while we were on our trip. So when we actually went on this trip with Compassion, Thor and I hadn't actually sponsored a child up until that point, but we were, you know, seriously considering it. And I guess what really encouraged us to sponsor was meeting the adults who were sponsored, Compassion-sponsored children. Most of them were our translators. One of our translators is now a teacher, and he said to us that he was telling us his testimony. He got sponsored when he was 6 years old, and he had a photo of the day that he got sponsored, and he's still so excited about it. And he's very thankful for the provision over the years. So as thankful as he is, and that now he has a wonderful career as a teacher, what he's most thankful about is his relationship with Jesus. And he said that when he was a sponsored child, it still is to this day, Sunday school is actually mandatory for the program. So it was his opportunity there to hear the gospel and by the grace of God believe. And there was another translator as well who I think John mentioned, who's now a psychologist and a translator. And she said that when she was a little girl, when things got tough, it was the letters from her sponsors that really helped her through those times. So I guess I'm just sharing that just to encourage you that if you sponsor a child, your contribution has ripple effects that you have no idea about. And we did hear firsthand that it actually brings hope into entire communities because they hear that life for their neighbor got changed and think, you know, it's a possibility that mine can change as well. Here we go, okay. So after hearing these testimonies, we were certain we wanted to sponsor a child, but we figured we would just either sponsor one of the children whose profiles we already had, or, you know, come home and then we'd just contact Compassion ourselves. But God has a different way of doing things. So on the Monday that we were there, we went to visit a project center. It was quite a bit outside the city. And we were driving for quite a bit. It was quite in a remote place. And when we eventually got to this little town, I guess, I had no idea where we were. We got to this town eventually, and there was slums and shacks, which was probably the worst that we've seen. And I remember thinking just in the car, like in the van, has anyone been here before? I meant like with the gospel, you know, a missionary, a preacher, an evangelist. I guess to the natural eye, it's a bit, it's daunting, and you wonder if anything can change. But just as I was having those thoughts, there was a huge sign, like a big billboard in the middle of the shacks that actually said, Jesus Christ is Lord. And I thought, wow, God, even here you reign. Yeah. So by then my faith had risen, and we eventually get to the child survival program, where Compassion has run this program alongside a local church. And we got an opportunity to meet some of the moms and the babies there. And this is actually where we got to meet Arsama, who we would later sponsor, and her mother, Alam. I think we have a picture of them here. Oh, it's already up. That's her there. So she's so cute. So obviously at that point we had no idea we would actually end up sponsoring her. But right after that we split off into smaller groups to go to home visits. So me, Johnny, Thor and Amy went to Arsama's parents' home. And I think we have a picture of a street right outside there. Perfect. This was right outside their home, and as you can see, there's not really like a proper pavement or anything, and it's just rocks and mud, poor sanitation, and the place was actually quite high in leprosy. And the pastor said to us, he actually pointed out a little hospital or a center where people with leprosy stay, and it was quite close. It was just on top of a little hill. So then we had a few minutes with the mother at their home, and we found out that they were a young Christian family. So it was little Arsama, her mom, who's about my age, and then the dad as well. And hearing about their life, I guess, just really moved us, and we just knew that we wanted to do something. The funny thing was, Thor and I didn't actually have a proper discussion about it afterwards. We just kind of like looked at each other and like, yeah, let's see if we can do something. Yeah, that was it. It was just really clear. Sorry, I kind of lost my place there. Yep. So yeah, we knew that we wanted to help the family. At first, it looked like we couldn't actually sponsor Arsama because she was placed within the Canada pool. And us, obviously, we would only be eligible to sponsor a child within the UK pool. But we were persistent, and we kept praying about it. And they said, well, we'll just have to wait and see if there's any way for us to be able to sponsor her. But we did have a peace about the situation. So we actually didn't hear about this for the rest of our trip until... we didn't hear about it in Ethiopia. I was actually on a flight back to Aberdeen, and we were getting a flight back from Heathrow. We sat in the plane, and Johnny was sitting a few rows behind us, and he just calls for our attention and says that everything's went well, and they've actually allocated her to the UK pool so that they can start setting up the sponsorship. And so we were very delighted with that, and the rest of the team were just like, what happened? Did they get the baby? They got the baby. It was awesome. People thought we adopted a kid. Oh, not quite. Not quite. It's not the same, no. Yeah, absolutely delighted. And I guess I just wanted to finish with this. This beautiful ebony wooden cup, I think we have a photo of it as well. It's up there, perfect. Is the only thing we bought in Ethiopia, apart from coffee, of course. And I bought this because almost on a daily basis, my mind wanders to Psalm 23. And when it says, you anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. I always picture a cup exactly like this. I don't know why. And I guess we bought this. It now sits in our living room as a little reminder. It's both a beautiful reminder and also a sad reminder. So the beautiful reminder is that my cup, Thor's cup, every Christian's cup, because of Jesus, is overflowing with spiritual blessing. So that actually arouses feelings of thanksgiving. Just reminds us how blessed we are. But the sad reminder is that and we think about that more now that we've went to Ethiopia. The sad reminder is that there's many people with cups that are completely empty because they don't know Jesus. And we just display this in our living room to kind of spur us on because, you know, it's like, okay, you went to Ethiopia, that was great, that was good. But we don't ever want to grow complacent or lukewarm and talk in the past tense. You know, like one time I went on a mission trip, one time I took a risk for Jesus, one time I did something for someone else. So it sits there as a reminder to not let your Christian walk be a thing of the past. And that's our hope. And yeah, I guess I'm just sharing it for an encouragement for you guys and for you guys to think maybe perhaps for you, your next step might be a mission trip. So I think that we'll have a panel, so I'll just pass over to Johnny.
Amazing. Thank you, Lorelei. Thank you, Thor. Wasn't that great? It's so inspiring. It was so exciting for us when we were in Ethiopia. We were kind of part of that journey of when they were actually trying to get this child who, you know, got allocated to the Canadian pool, to the UK pool, and then from the UK pool that they could sponsor her. So it's amazing. It's not often you get the chance to actually go into the house of the child you're going to sponsor. So I know it's exciting. Great. What we're going to do now is we're going to invite the 4 panelists up. So you know here, come way up. Give them a round of applause. Pick a seat, any seat. It's fun. So we're going to pretend you weren't here, but it's kind of awkward when we're just staring at you. So, so what we've got is we've got some questions that I've prepared that I'm going to ask these guys about their time in Ethiopia, if that's okay. Just to hear the perspective. Hopefully it'll be a discussion rather than just a back and forth sort of thing with me and one of them. But we'll see how it goes. So, first one, Cam. What made you go to Ethiopia?
Yeah, I heard about it from church. Hello? Anyway, I heard about the Ethiopia trip from church, and I went home and I said to Robert, Robert, have you heard about the Ethiopia trip? You want to go? So I was saying to him, you want to go? And then he said, I think we both should go. And I panicked, because I'm not a traveller, and I like my comfort, and I like being at home. So we sort of started to pray. We started to pray together, and we just thought, okay. And then we had felt this peace in our hearts. Yeah, you know, we've always loved compassion. And we just thought, God, if this is what you want us to do, that you'll make the way, because of cost and all that. And so as we prayed and we started to prepare, God provided. We both got tax returns and the tickets are paid. It was amazing how God provided. So that's
great, isn't it? So Robert, tell us about compassion. Obviously, we've seen a few videos up there. We've had compassion up to our church before. So what's your take on compassion, especially now you've visited them over in Ethiopia?
Well, we were involved when we were first married. We thought, well, how do you reach out to the poor? You know, we stay in Aberdeen, Bridge of Dawn. How do you reach out to the poorest of the poor? And, you know, when we first got married, we thought it'd be a great idea to sponsor children abroad. So that was about 18 years ago now. So the reality of going and seeing the outworking of that just blew us both away. Compassion works with partners with a local church. They go around to register the poorest of the poor kids or poor families. They bring them back to the church to register, enter them into the program. And so the first church we visited on the first day we were there was in the middle of a slum. And there was something like 250 kids sponsored through ourselves and around the world in this particular project in the middle of the slum. And they have education, they pay their fees. You've got to pay for education in Ethiopia, pens, everything you need to go to school, food for the families. If the mums and dads or single mums were struggling, then Compassion would step in and help them. Access to medicine, dentists, things like that. But I suppose that the greatest thing is they introduce the gospel, and they're so connected with the local church. Because when we were walking back through the slum at the end of the first day, the pastor he seemed to know everybody in the slum. All the kids knew them by name, and obviously it had a huge impact in the particular area we're in. So it was amazing to see the work of Compassion for real, rather than just through a letter or a picture, the reality of what sponsorship does.
That's great. We'll go to Amy. Amy, you met your sponsor child. What was that like for you?
That was quite overwhelming, to be honest. The thought of going on a mission trip anyway to Ethiopia was itself quite a powerful thought, but the thought of being able to go over and meet the little boy that I'm sponsoring, just I hadn't even realised that was going to happen until kind of last minute, and then I think I'd forgotten, and then you said, oh, there will be a few you that get to meet your sponsor child, and I wasn't very good at looking at the paperwork and the stuff that gets sent on WhatsApp.
We noticed.
So they said, oh yeah, I think you're getting to meet your sponsor child, Amy. And I was like, oh, I didn't realise. And Cam showed me the paperwork and my name was there and I was going to get to meet Kaba. So I was really overwhelmed by that. And I think I brought some toys and some clothes for him. And you know, with our letters going back and forth, he had a little brother and a little sister and his mum. And so I kind of get a little bit carried away sometimes. So I bought gifts for the whole family and my suitcase was packed. And I remember us coming down from the hotel and all the kids were there and he just ran straight up to me, gave me a huge hug and wrapped his arms around me, and it was just really overwhelming. You know, I did shed a few tears, and I think what stood out for me as well was his mum, and I wanted to make mum feel comfortable. You know, mum was there and there was this white, youngish Westerner girl you know, kind of coming and hugging her child and giving him gifts, and you don't know how they must feel about that. So I really went out my way to make sure she felt comfortable and asked her loads of questions with a translator and just really just liberated her and kind of affirmed her in her role as the mum and not me, and kind of, you know, it was a beautiful time. And yeah, I'm looking forward to going back to visit as well, maybe 2-3 years time when he's a bit older, and just keep that relationship going. And because the letters that I get, he's only 5, so it's not much. It's just a couple of toy cars coloured in and kind of his favourite food and stuff. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that progress.
Can I just add? When we saw our sponsored child and we were sitting, and the mom said, you know, your money, the sponsorship you made really makes a difference. It really changes. It made me cry, really, because I think I've got 2 children and they're very blessed. And he says, the money you gave, it makes such a difference. And that really just, it was so emotional. It was really good.
It's very good. Just on that, but over to you, John. In terms of what difference does it make then, sponsoring a child? I know you sponsor a number of children through Compassion. So what difference does it make, having seen it, I suppose, in the field?
Yeah, like Robert said, you know, the Compassion program select the poorest of the poor. So within the slum themselves, they pick the poorest of the children who have absolutely no opportunities. What it offers them is actually, and their family, and the impact on the local community, is sustenance to actually, you can't learn for a start if you're hungry, you know, and actually not only just providing the sustenance, but also the infrastructure locally. They select leaders to be within a certain walking radius of where they plant the project. So those who look after those who are in need are actually from the same area. At the same time, you know, the structure and the project itself offers the family members to go in on a Sunday to learn about the gospel and the wisdom that brings. You know, sometimes it's, you know, physical hunger, but there's also spiritual hunger. So it's feeding that. To go further, I mean, it's a project that not only children, they sponsor up to, I think, age of 22. So it's not only not bringing the child up through teenage years, through education. At the end of that, they select those who have great potential to be leaders for the future, for their country and for the community. They take them through university. They give them extra leadership training in additional to what they get on education. And the impact is shown from those just three examples out of the millions of children that they have, is immense, you know. And they give the credit to Jesus, and they're most humble and the most just inspiring young leaders that even on any forum, in any country. So it is great to see that.
So obviously you all shared a kind of moment there that you liked, but was there any other special moments that kind of stood out for you guys when you look back in your time there? So kind of an open question to you.
Well, look, can I go first? Oh, I've got a mic. And
No, you don't.
So I think looking at our team, I think Johnny, you mentioned it, you know, just for those who are considering missions in the future, I'm sitting next to 3 amazing people that I have very little knowledge of before the mission trip. But now these 3, you know, for me is a really close friend of mine and fellows in church that we shared something really special together. And it's amazing what you can squeeze in a week. Yeah, is that right? Yeah. And it felt like much longer than that. And it's because you do share, you cry together, you laugh together, you eat unknown food together. And being the medic, they share all sorts with you.
I think what stood out for me was when we went there to kind of minister, but we were ministered to, and I think we went into houses that we wouldn't call houses. You know, they were more like mud huts and were built together with very little, and there were flies everywhere. And you know, every house that we went into, we were served and we were ministered to with joy and with love and with just this cheer and this welcomeness, and it was overwhelming. And we sat and we drank lots of coffee and cake, and it was just a privilege to be invited in with such servant-heartedness, and we got to pray, the privilege of praying with families in their home, and I think there were some moments that were quite harrowing and quite sad, you know, and you had to really hold back the tears. And I think that's where Johnny, being our leader, really helped, because there was moments of silence where you didn't really know what to say, and Johnny would step in and just really take the moment and just really translate the word for everyone of the gratefulness and the thankfulness and the hope of Christ. And it was just really yeah.
I suppose there are lots of highlights. For me, I think I cried more than my wife, to be honest. One particular house we went to, I asked, you saw the gentleman speaking, Joseph, who was talking about King's Community Church. He was one of the leaders. So he took us down on a dirt track down to this homemade house. And I asked him, how bad is it? And he says it's as bad as it gets. And it was overwhelming, really. Overwhelming. But, a young woman with 2 kids, abandoned by her husband. But what stirred you was the hope they had in Jesus. And that's what you came away with, the hope that the gospel is for these people. And God's building his kingdom in these places, and we've got the privilege of being part of it. And that's what struck me, is God building his kingdom, even in this worst slums you could ever imagine, that God's working and moving. And we have the privilege to take part in that. And we've got lots to learn from these people too. They're so thankful, so welcoming, so community focused. It changes you. It changes you. Sorry.
That's true. I felt the same. It's true. Robert cried the most. I think I went into shock. It was like a roller coaster, and I'm like, can this really happen? Where we are, we have running water, we have heating, we have, and they had nothing, but yet they had love. They had such a love, and they were so thankful that we had come to see them, and it was just amazing. It was amazing. The team was amazing. The whole experience was amazing.
That's fantastic. Got one last question that's open to anyone. What would you say to anyone who's considering sponsoring a child or going on a mission trip? Nothing. It's a double question.
I'd say don't sponsor a child, sponsor as many as you can. It's, we're homebirds, us two. So it's fantastic. I mean, we'd like to go back again if God opens the door. And so I'd say pray about it and go for it. And go in faith. And your lives will be changed more than you change other people's lives,
I suppose for me it's that proverb there's a proverb and it says, those who give to the poor lend to the Lord. And I think that I always think, wow, what amazing scripture that is. What amazing, how can you lend to God Almighty? But he does so much more in you. And, we're privileged to have what we do. So I would say, go and sponsor a child and you'll see how God works.
So I think before we went on the mission trip, we thought that was the mission. The mission was to go and visit the project. I think a lot of us now realize actually the mission is now. The mission is today, tomorrow, the day after. Getting more and more children sponsored through the Compassion Project. There will be cards sent around with photos on it. I just ask you I like to do visualization. When you look at a child's photo, don't see sadness, see hope. Yeah, see the giggles and the laugh behind that child, and the immense opportunities that your sponsorship can bring to that child in lifting them up to Christ, in lifting them out of poverty, give them that chance to get out of their circumstances. Just listen to the photo. Don't look at the photo, but actually see what that photo in the future will be. Do you want to see that child being somebody who's continuing the slum, or do you want to see that contributing to a society that brings their country up? So our mission is now, and it's to encourage everyone that we speak to, is to know about the project. So that's what I would say.
And I think as well, for those that are already sponsoring children, to make sure that you write to them regularly. Because one thing we noticed when we were there was the excitement that the kids had in showing us their letters. And, it was a highlight of their kind of month was receiving these letters. And I know you can kind of get complacent sometimes. And I think so one thing that I could press on to you would be to make sure that you're writing regularly and make them lengthy. And, and if you can, send over a little gift to them as well.
Super. That was great, wasn't it? Give a round of applause. Thank you so much. What we're going to do now then, before I'll share for 5 minutes. But before I do that, what we'd like to do is just show you a taster of what's happening next year for our missions for Kings. So as I stand to the side, if the team upstairs could put on that video for the 2019 missions, please.
In 2019, King's Community Church will once again reach out into communities across the globe. As well as the many national and international projects we run and support financially, we're excited about sending missions teams to projects beyond the UK border. In May, a team from King's will be heading to Spain to continue our work with local missionaries Gabrielle and Daniela Corradini. There, we are looking to help spread the gospel through supporting street outreach, serving in the local church and its various ministries, whilst practically helping in many other ways. And in September, KCC will send a team to Kenya, East Africa. Our team will then witness in person the impact the water drilling projects we support have in the communities in Swari, an area in desperate need of clean water supplies. Also, we will continue our work with improving a school in the town of Isiolo, which will help give a better environment for children's education. If you're interested in these mission trips, find the missions tab on the KCC app, the website, or speak to the Next Steps team today.
Hope some of you are already interested in signing up for a mission trip for next year. I think it should be good. It should be good. Spain in May and Kenya in September. For the next just 5 or 10 minutes or so, I just want to talk a little bit about mission, if that's okay. And talk really about a couple of themes. It's what is mission, and I suppose the second one is to encourage some of you to go on a mission trip, and that is why should I go on a mission trip? But before I do that, I just want to give you some of the stats I know that Paul mentioned earlier, just about what Kings do in the kind of missions world, so to speak. So last year, we gave around about £130,000 to various missions organisations. So that's local and global organisations. But not only that, 191 children are sponsored through Compassion by you guys. That's separate to that 130,000, so that's 191 children whose lives are being changed. Not just their lives, but their families' lives are being changed. And that actually equates to about £60,000 a year that's given away by you guys to sponsor children from Compassion. So that's brilliant. So thank you so much. That's amazing. My wife says I'm competitive, and I think I am a little bit competitive because Kings he's got the highest number of Compassion children sponsors in Scotland. And it's something I'm excited about. So I think you should be too. So well done. We were number 2 for a while, but we've crept up, so it's great. But it's not only in Ethiopia that we do work with Compassion. Of that £130,000, if you fly 4,500 miles from here, you'll arrive in Kenya, where this year you can see we're going on a mission trip, but this year they've been drilling for water in the most northern part of Kenya that will impact about 2,000 families. It's tremendous. And if you jump in a plane and fly another 30,000 miles, that'd be to the moon, 3,000 miles, you arrive in India. And in India, we're actually, in this last year, we've bought motorbikes for some of the pastors there so they can actually reach some of the community groups that they couldn't have reached before. If you fly another 1,500 miles out of India and arrive in Laos in Asia, you'll see in this last year that our church has managed to give sewing machines to a number of young females to get them into employment and out of the work they weren't in before. That's amazing, isn't it? It's amazing. Yeah, go clap. So then you've got them places. Then if you come back to Europe, there's touch points we've got in Montenegro, in Iceland, in Spain, but even closer to home. Within our church, there's food banks that are being run out. There's a building away to open in Torry that has been outworked. And the reason I'm saying all these things is not to kind of pat ourselves on the back and say how good we are, but I think it shows just what a small church on the corner of Urquhart Road can actually do in this world. It's amazing, isn't it? It's the footprint that can be left by a small church on Urquhart Road. I think Lorelei mentioned earlier that it's that kind of ripple effect. And that's what it is, that we're making ripples all throughout the world and even in our country. Can you imagine what it would be like if people actually came to our church for the answers for our community? Can you imagine what that would be like? All these little ripple effects are going on throughout our country if people actually came to Kings for the answers, if the government came to Kings for the answers of what to do in these areas. It'd be tremendous. So I'm going to take a few minutes to talk about why mission matters. So 2 years ago this week, I stepped foot in Ethiopia with Tom and Ian for the first time. And that was my first exposure, I suppose, to international mission. And a verse that actually spoke to me during that time was from Amos 5, verses 21 to 24. And it's from the Message translation. And I'll share that with you if you want. Or if you don't want, you're still getting it. So it says, I can't stand your religious meetings. I'm fed up with your conferences and conventions. I want nothing to do with your religious projects, your pretentious slogans and goals. I'm sick of your fundraising schemes, your PR, image making. I'd have had enough of your noisy ego music. When was the last time you sang to me? Do you know what I want? I want justice, oceans of it. I want fairness, rivers of it. That's what I want. That's all I want. See, our God has a heart for justice. He cares about the marginalized. He cares about the oppressed. He cares about the widow and the orphan. They matter so deeply to him. So when we say, why does mission matter? It's because it matters to God. And it's part of our mandate. That great mandate is to go into all the world and make disciples of all nations. Jesus commands that, and the way that we can do that, as Thomas shared this morning, is to show love to all these people. In John 7:38, it says, whoever believes in me will flow rivers of living water from within them. And can you imagine what that would actually look like for our church? Is if every person, rivers of living water flowed out of them. Imagine that tidal wave that would come from King's Community Church to address some of the injustices and poverty and unfairness we see in society. Then we truly would see oceans of justice, rivers of fairness. So that's why mission matters, because justice matters and fairness matter. So the next thing is, why should you go on a mission trip? So a couple of folk have said to me in the past, oh, we don't need to go on a mission trip. You know, you'd be better off giving your money to the charity directly. It's true, but you probably won't. But that's an argument. Another reason that someone might say is, it's only for a week. What impact can it make in a week? But I think you're looking at, in terms of what you can actually address, you're thinking in that 1 week, but it's so much more. Because what I think mission is I believe that going on a mission trip creates an environment for God to speak to you. It removes you from your comfort zone, stretches you beyond your natural desire. It allows you to see the world a little more how God sees it, helps you put your troubles in perspective, and it has eternal value that'd be far greater than a holiday or a new iPhone X. So in terms of taking you and stretching you, when we were in Addis, you heard stories there where we actually went into people's houses and we prayed for people who had nothing. They had nothing in terms of 4 walls, and they didn't even know where their next meal was coming from. What do you pray in that situation? What do you even say in that situation? So it really does stretch you. Another thing, it takes you out your comfort zone. I remember a story when I was there, I think it was that same time that we visited the house of Laureline Thor's sponsored child. But on the way back, we visited just on the home visit, and on the way back from the home visit, we got told in 15 minutes' time the bus will pick you up. It's like, great. Yes, they know what's coming. So in 15 minutes' time, the bus will pick you up. So that's super. So we arrived, went, obviously, there was 4 of us. It was me, Lorelei, Thor, and Amy. And we waited for the bus. There was no bus. It was God. I don't know where the bus had gone. So the 4 of us are standing there in some random place in the outskirts of Addis. And then there was some Ethiopian guide who'd met 5 minutes before. And there we were, a Scotsman, a Scots lady, an Iranian, and a German, standing in the middle of Addis. And I was just thinking, what am I doing? What am I doing? It was the things we were walking around, and I had one hand in my pocket in case I got mugged, keep my mobile phone on me. And I remember thinking, how much money have I tucked away in my sock as my emergency stash? God completely put me out of my comfort zone in that scenario. And I know he did for these guys. I think was pretending it was all okay. But inside I was kind of freaking out. But we're still here. So God does take you out of your comfort zone. And he lets you see things through his eyes in a different way. I think John mentioned so often we go there thinking, oh, we can help. Or, what they've got, look at the poverty there. But the poverty there is actually material poverty. There's so much richness in that country in terms of the community. So when you came back to the UK, you realize how much richness there actually was over there in their community, in that sense of community. And it's actually here that we're probably poor in poverty in that region, in the poverty of community. So it actually opens your eyes to how God sees the world and not just how we see it when we sit down. So why go on a mission trip? Lorelei mentioned it gives an opportunity for ripples to be made. When we were over there, from that group, we've got 20 sponsored kids from the group of folk that went to Ethiopia. And coming back, another 5 were sponsored on the plane journey home. But they weren't just by us, it was by family and friends of ours. So it does have a ripple effect in terms of what it does by going on a mission trip. Not just for you, but for friends and family, and it kind of cascades outwards. So, just to summarize, why do we do mission? Well, it's because justice matters. Oceans of fairness, rivers of it. And God's equipped us with what we need. Rivers of living water can flow out of us as we put our faith in God. Why go on a mission trip? Well, it's an opportunity for ripples to be made. And what can I do now? We can all do something. All do something. It doesn't need to be a mission trip. We can all do something. As Paul mentioned, this Friday, there's a food bank running in Tesco Dainston. We can all do something. So we have 191 kids sponsored so far. But at the back and downstairs in the coffee lounge, there'll be an opportunity for you to actually sponsor a Compassion Child. We've had 15 profiles that have been sent up for today from Compassion. I'd love it if all 15 remained up here and we didn't have to post any back down to the Compassion office. So I'll invite the band to come back up. But as I conclude, I was thinking about the ripples and the ripple effects that can be made. But you know what ripples actually are? Ripples are small waves that don't last unless something's blown on them. That's what ripples are. They're things you throw in, and a small wave comes, but they don't last. But wind fuels ripples to create waves. And the wind fuels waves and creates a mighty swell. And I really my prayer for today was that from this church, that God would breathe on the things that we do. God would provide the wind to the things we do. So as we intentionally make small ripples, whether it's in Aberdeen, whether it's in the UK, Europe, or whether it's in internationally going on a mission trip, by creating these ripples, you're allowing God to breathe on that so that rivers will flow. So I'm just praying that as rivers flow from this place, the more wind will blow on them, and a swell will come. A swell that can actually not just be seen here, but a swell that can be seen thousands of miles away. Can you imagine what that would look like for this church if all together rivers of living water would flow out of us and we'd all continually just make ripples, make small ripples, but believing that God will add the wind to create waves. If you're interested in going to the mission trip, please speak to someone at the Next Steps point. If you're interested in sponsoring a child, speak to someone at the Next Steps point or find one of the people that's holding the children's profiles. But I really would encourage you just to do something, to make a ripple in the society that we live in. Thank you.